Hello and welcome to the 120th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends even when you're losing. I'm here with my friends Mark and Neelan. Hello, good sirs.
Hey.
Hello.
If this podcast were a person, that person would be very old now, guys. 120. How do you feel?
Quite old.
I feel young and spry.
You look good for 120.
Thank you.
Mark, you are the closest to death. So why don't you tell us what that feels like?
I don't know if that's true. I'm the farthest along, but I don't think I'm the closest to death. My money would be on one of you two, for sure.
Wow.
You think you're healthier than us?
Oh, yeah.
What? Based on what?
Based on...
him actually being an athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to sit up a little straighter in my chair,
I saw something for sale. I think it's going on Kickstarter or something. It's a thing that you stick on your back between your shoulder blades, and if it senses that you're slouching, it vibrates.
I have one
to remind you. Do you really?
Yeah. It's actually,
how's that work?
It works reasonably okay, but you have to be bothered to do it. Put it on in the morning.
Right. Okay. I've never heard anything like that.
They were kind of doing the rounds at work because you can imagine that's a very slouchy environment as a game dev studio.
Interesting.
You have one of those?
I do. It's actually reasonably smart. It does a good job of, because what you do is you set it at a position. It's like, this is my upright position. And then whenever you slouch at all, it just gives you a little buzz. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's upright. And the idea is that you would learn to do that without needing it after a while. But
sure,
not reached that point yet.
Can you wear it anywhere else?
You absolutely could. Be as creative as you choose.
Well, that's enough about death. Today on the Board Game Barrage podcast, we are going to be trying to maintain positivity in the year 2020. So this is an episode just about how we see board games right now, how we see them proceeding for the rest of the year, and kind of how we can engage in board gaming when we can't, for the most part. So just wanted to do a check-in with everybody, and also talk about some of the games that we have been playing. Mark?
All right, here we go. I played a bunch of games that are mostly two-player focused. Games I haven't played in a while that I thought would work good with two players because of quarantine situation. The player count is limited. So I played Lost Cities, the Knizia classic. Love the game. It feels to me like, while it's not one of my favorite games of all time, it's just about a perfect game. For what it's trying to do and for how it plays, I just think Lost Cities is just wonderful. A game that's very similar, Coloretto, I played. The same sort of push your luck vibe that you get with Lost Cities, played a little bit differently. So those two games feel like sort of two of the same sort of types of games, both fantastic.
When you played Coloretto, were you using the traditional scoring or have you done any of the variant scoring?
I used the advanced scoring that comes in the box. So I'm not even aware of the variant scoring. These are
Well, no, I think that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
But I think there are other scorings. But basically, the advanced scoring is where if you get too many in a hop,
bad.
it starts going down.
Yes, that's what we played. Yeah.
Is that your preferred way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Trying to find the Goldilocks range there prevents you from going too hard into a color, which I like. Played Splendor at two players. I was looking for a easy to teach game that I thought would play smoothly, and Splendor did. I've never played at two players. I don't think it's my favorite player count, but it's just really comfortable. Splendor's super comfortable, super easy to play, super easy to teach, and taught it to a non-gamer who picked it up in no time.
I like Splendor at 2. I feel like it works pretty well, actually. I guess you're probably right in that it might not be the best player count, but I've been surprised when I played it that it worked as a decent two-player.
It worked fine. I feel like I'm predisposed to, whenever I play a game that plays more than two, at two, I just naturally feel like there's something missing, even if there might not be. There's something about playing a multiplayer game at two. Yeah. I always start out thinking like it's the non-prime way to play it.
What I like about Splendor at 2 is that you're much more focused on what cards is that player specifically targeting, and then the reservation of cards becomes that much more cutthroat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can effectively hoard one of the resources and prevent them from just getting them because they scale the amount of chips per player count. So that can be really infuriating at two players.
Yeah, the only time that you can use the two of a single color action is if none of the color has been taken. So it's definitely an interesting wrinkle in the game. And again, played very smoothly, and we had a lot of fun playing it. So those are three classics. And the fourth classic that I played was Bugs in the Kitchen. Bugs in the Kitchen.
True classic.
Look it up.
You played that with your dog? Or who'd you play that with? What? You played that two-player?
Yeah. It plays
Bugs
great
in the
to play.
kitchen?
Yeah.
Like not at a party, just like this was not
No,
ironic?
yeah, no, like play Lost Cities, play Splendor, play Bugs in the Kitchen. It's like the natural triumvirate.
trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't know about Bugs in the Kitchen, you got to look up Bugs in the Kitchen. Bugs in the Kitchen is a game that has a bug in it, a bug that moves on its own in the box. Do you know any other games that has one?
Wait, there's just one bug?
Yeah.
How many bugs do you want?
Well,
I guess it
the
is
game's called
Bugs in the Kitchen. That's true. That's true. It is not a hundreds of horses accuracy of title, but Bugs in the Kitchen is a lot of fun. It's a game that you can play with anybody, and it's just full of laughs and great, and there's a live bug in it. So
you can buy those bugs separately, so you could put multiple bugs in the kitchen.
could. Yeah, I guess that's
That'd be
like
something.
advanced version
Yeah.
of Bugs in the Kitchen. True Bugs in the Kitchen. So those are the games I played.
It's like I could imagine a series, bugs in the bathroom, bugs in the gazebo, like where else could the bugs in the jacuzzi? Someone should pay me for the rights to these.
There you go. Absolutely.
You need some caffeine or something, Mark, right?
No, I'm good. What? I do have.
No, you need a little pep. You're talking about these
I've got
classics.
Pepsi right
Diet
now.
Pepsi right there.
I'm pepped.
Well, so I have a couple games to talk about, and the first one comes in the form of an app. I purchased Qwirkle off the iOS App Store for $2.99. Neelan, what's that in, what is it, RSA
in
money?
South African in RSA money. God, I don't know. I feel like the rand fluctuates so much. Who can say?
Qwirkle is a very simple game that basically steals all the mechanisms from Scrabble, but then you can play it even if you're a dummy. So it takes out all the words and replaces them with colors and symbols. And so you're either playing rows and columns of all the same color or rows and columns of all the same symbol. If you have a column of red pieces, you can only have one red circle in that column. And so it uses the same sort of Scrabble scoring where if you put a piece in place and then you can only build either in one direction, but you score in multiple directions. So you score for pieces that are already on the board. It also uses the same sort of thing that Scrabble has where if you complete a row or a column using enough pieces, you score bonus points. So this is called a Qwirkle, I think. This is really good. I'm actually shocked I've not played it to this point because I love how Scrabble plays, but knowing words is not my strong suit.
It's funny, when you said Qwirkle, I was convinced that I had played it, and then you described it briefly, and I was like, nope. But then I think I have played this, but maybe once long ago, and I feel like I remember liking it.
I was inspired because Dan did a video review. Dan Hughes of Sporadically Bored did a video review with his daughter, Cora. And I wasn't inspired by Dan. I was inspired by Cora, who liked the game. So that got me to spend that $2.99 Rand dollars. Actually, I think it's really good. Neelan, you should buy it. We should play it.
Yeah.
Because it's that satisfying game of a little bit of area control as you're trying to plot out where to go. It's a little annoying in the scoring, but in a iOS or an app implementation, it scores for you,
Right.
Which is great. So you're not sitting there writing down the scoring the whole time. And it really, really is simple. And I'm surprised I don't have it in my collection. I should have it in my collection. I want to play it with my family. And honestly, probably will buy it, which will cost me a lot more than $2.99 Rand dollars. But one thing I did want to talk about that I thought was interesting is the game defaults to showing you each position that a tile can go into. So when you hover, it's like, here are the 17 places this could go. And it also highlights in red if one of those places is a Qwirkle, the bonus point thing. And I was just like, this is too much. Yeah. And it went back to some of our discussions over whether a game is finding all your available moves or whether it's evaluating which one of those moves is best. And I was thinking it should just tell me how many points I'd score in each one, and then I wouldn't even, have to play the game.
Right.
But the funny thing happened is when I turned it off, it took me about 15 minutes to not be annoyed that it wasn't showing me, because you get used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was kind of half playing, half watching a TV show, and it's just funny how that how the app implementation of a thing can be different than the real life.
I think that's something that I remember being extremely true of playing Words with Friends, as whenever you have an asynchronous multiplayer game, it's hard not just to be, take 1 hour for each of your turns versus however long you would have to take in a game of Scrabble.
Neelan, you were about to say it's hard not to cheat. I saw the look on your face.
No. Never actually cheat. That's obviously not cool.
And then one of the other games that I got to play is actually thanks to the generosity of Mark Bigney of So Very Wrong About Games. He saw me whining on Board Game Geek. John Cloudis, the creator of Small Box Games, had a set of games come out. where you could purchase them, and then he unfortunately couldn't get them produced, and so he released them as print and plays instead, and I don't have access to a printer, and that's not really my thing, so I was pretty upset, and he contacted me on Twitter and actually printed out 2 of the games for me, put them in sleeves, and shipped them to America.
Wow.
Yeah, and he won't let me pay him back, so I owe him some form of blood debt. But so thank you for that, Mark. The good Mark, right?
That's me.
And yeah. So I got to try a game with Christina. We played 2 games of Bronze Age by John Cloudis. This is a micro game. It's a 1-deck civilization game. You can probably imagine why I might be interested in it, given my love of another 1-deck civilization game, Innovation. In Bronze Age, John Cloudis is the hardest designer to figure out how to describe his games, right? The last one we talked about was The North. Omen, A Reign of War, and Mezzo are all games of his. In Bronze Age, everyone has a advanced civilization that gives them 2 special powers. So there's 6 cards, and you have 2 special powers on each card that allow you to, when you collect a symbol and put it face up, use a special action. The game consists of playing cards to 3 different decks and taking and drawing cards and laying them out in front of you in sort of a tableau. Honestly, it's kind of similar to Innovation in the sense that you are investing in your travel ability, and you've got 7 boat icons, and the more boat icons you have, the better. You know, the more columns icons you have, the more that you score points at the end of the game. One of your advanced abilities might allow you to steal territories from your opponent. And so the game is, like John Cloudis' best, a very, very tactical game. It's a game of evaluating what will get you the most cards into your hand, how you can convert those into territories for yourself, and then ultimately how you can score points. The jury is still out for me on Bronze Age. I want to play it a time or 2 again. My first impression is more negative than I would like. I love John Cloudis, and I love this theme, but my first 2 plays are leaving me a little bit cold right now.
I don't know really anything about it. It sounds very innovation-y based on your description of it.
Yeah, I think that ultimately could be where my sort of annoyance comes from. I think that a lot of the strategy is built into which advanced civilization that you have. I would say that that's probably 70% of the game is how to exploit your special power. And in the first game, Christina's special power felt like it negated mine a little bit. She had a way to steal territories from me and put them into her tableau. And all I had a way to do was gain territories. So as I was gaining, she was stealing. Some of the choices feel a little bit more incidental than I would like. Obviously, I have not played it enough to give it that full impression, and I will play it again. And I know Christina's perception was much more positive, and she's actually accused me of only liking games that I'm good at, and that the reason that I dislike this is because I've been beat twice.
I'm glad you said it, because she told us to point it out if you didn't.
How big is the deck of cards?
I think it's probably 60 cards.
Okay.
He produces them in that, it's like probably that same box size that you saw the North in, which is like smaller than any normal game publisher.
Right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it has a lovely pastel art aesthetic. You know, Bigney didn't cut the cards very straight, so that's a little minor knock against it. So that is Bronze Age by John Cloudis. I have another game from him as well, Cactus. I think these are the ideal sort of 2-player light, can play it after work without too much mental effort. I just need to play it a few more times to find out if this one is worth it. Neelan, what have you been playing?
So I've started getting into a cooperative, but I believe mostly solo game called Renegade. I've played through the introductory scenario for this. This was recommended and given to me by our good friend Marnie. I don't have a lot I want to say about it just yet because I want to get into one of the proper scenarios over the course of the next week. So I'll come back to that next week, but it's pretty interesting. Mostly what I want to talk about is Guards of Atlantis II. So this is a Kickstarter, which at the time that this episode goes up should be live. This is the sequel, as you might imagine, to the Guards of Atlantis, which is, you know, it's been in my top 10 pretty much since the game came out. It was back in 2017 that the first game was released. It is a board game that emulates a MOBA. So you have a team of heroes and you're fighting against another team of heroes. And you're primarily pushing down the lane towards the enemy base, killing minions and attacking their heroes as you go. But what's neat about it is that every hero has a completely unique construction to them, which is either their special ability or the way they move, the way they attack. Their specialization is pretty distinct. We've covered the first game quite a bit over the course of the podcast, so I want to talk about what the specific things that Guards of Atlantis II changes about the game, and some of them are pretty fundamentally address the main issues that we've had with the game. First and foremost, a lot of what I think the designer Artyom has been trying to do is speed up the game. So it's a game that typically ran very, very long in its original form, and what Guards of Atlantis II does through a couple of measures is speed up the game. It changes some win conditions. It makes it so there's actually a fixed clock in the game. So after a certain number of pushes, the game ends, which leads to this very decisive final push, which just feels really, really, really tense. It adds an end game condition that's tied to killing the enemy heroes. So there's more incentive to do some more, hero killing, which just means that those moments of, oh my God, I'm going to die, and trying to set up these sort of combination ganks are just so much more inviting. And it also changes the map in a ways that allows it, which makes it easier to get around. So it just streamlines a lot of the game in a ways that just felt really, really smart. I've always praised the original game for just having pretty fast gameplay, and that it's mostly simultaneous. You sort of choose a card to play and then reveal it. But often after that point, it sort of slows down to this very procedural, well, if you do this, then I might go here, and I might do this, and we do this. And it kind of gets rid of a lot of that. It's also involved a big rework of all of the heroes from the first game. So they're all back in this game, but they've all been substantially changed, as well as a bunch of new heroes. And the specialization on each of them just gets that much more in depth. I've been playing this a lot over Tabletopia. We played it in person with Artyom at Chuck's, in fact. It's quite a lot of refinement that's gone into the formula, while still it retains everything that's good about the original, but it's been refined and improved in so many different ways. I'm super excited for this. I think he's also done a lot of good work with the art. As in the first game, every single card is unique, has unique art. The board looks beautiful. There are now unique sort of player boards for every single character in the game. It's quite a lot. It's quite an involved project, and I've been very impressed with what he's done with it.
I think one of the things that we all agree on as Board Game Barrage, that's the We're Not Wizards pronunciation, Barrage, is this concept of if a game gives you an experience that you can't get anywhere else, that is a sign of a good game. And so I guess, Neelan, what I'd love to hear from you, given that this is a fairly expensive, minis heavy Kickstarter game, is who is it for? What's your pitch, and why is that worth it?
So I think that you're going to require, first and foremost, quite a specific audience for this. I think that's worth saying out the gate. This is definitely not going to be a game for everyone, unfortunately. But if you have a dedicated group of players that has perhaps some affinity for MOBAs, that I think that goes a long way, or at the very least, that sort of commitment to repeat plays of a team versus team adversarial game. So one of the things that can be quite off-putting about this genre as a whole, and this extends to the video games as well, is that if you don't feel like you're clicking with it, it can just feel like you're struggling against the system a little bit. But I think that what you're going to get out of it, if you get past that barrier, and again, I think that this smooths out a lot of those barriers, even from the first game, is a game that you're going to want to revisit with that same group of people, see your collective skill at the game grow, try different heroes out, try different combinations of heroes. It also works quite well as a 4-player game, which I think I wouldn't have called that the sweet spot for Guards of Atlantis 1, but this feels like it works especially well even at 2 versus 2. So I think there is a somewhat reduced barrier for entry for this, but my pitch to you, if this sounds intriguing, is see if you can find 3 other people that you'll be willing to engage with this in a repeat sense. It's not going to gravitate to everyone immediately. It encourages experience. It encourages learning its systems. It encourages learning its characters, learning the nuances of what good and bad team play is. And I think if you are willing to give it what it demands of you in order to get to that level, it's one of the most rewarding competitive games I've ever played, frankly.
And now I'm going to contradict Neelan by saying that I don't have any experience with MOBA games. I know them just very, very generally. I've never played a MOBA game, like a real MOBA game on the computer. And I've only played Guards of Atlantis II. We played with Artyom at Shucks, so I haven't dove into it. But those two things that might be negatives or might be keeping me from really enjoying Guards of Atlantis were non-factors in a negative sense. I really, really enjoyed my plays of both Guards of Atlantis and Guards of Atlantis II. I'm super excited to play them more, even though like my plays were shallow because they were like a first run through of them. I didn't get a chance to really dive in. The nuance was clear. I could see that playing certain heroes or working on my strategy would definitely improve my success in the game, and that was something that I found exciting. And maybe this is also a sports thing because Guards of Atlantis feels more like analogous to like a sports game than most other team board games. There is like a competitive, like going after a base. There's like a goal-oriented thing to Guards of Atlantis that you don't find in a lot of team-based board games, I think. But even on that shallow level, I was super excited. I've mentioned this before, but I was playing with people who, with you two and with Artem, people who have experience in MOBA, and you guys completely outclassed me. And even that I found exciting. For some reason, the idea that there's a benefit to experience felt like a very strong positive. It didn't feel like frustrating to me, like, oh, these guys are better than me and I'm out of it. Because there are different levels of heroes that are different levels of complexity, and I was playing with a less complex hero, and I thought my goals and my strengths were pretty clear, whereas you guys were playing more nuanced characters that, you know, you could see how to play them. I was playing a very straightforward character in both games, and I enjoyed everything about it. The sports aspect of it, the getting into the hero, the getting into like the MOBA type of game. I would say even if you're not committed to playing this game a bunch of times, which I think you'll enjoy it and you will want to play it a bunch of times, but even a one-off, even playing it once every couple months, as I think a lot of people play, you know, their board games with that sort of frequency, I think it's a great game just even on that level as well. I don't think you need to necessarily commit. I think it'll be benefited, but I don't think it's a necessary factor for the game.
I think that the sports comparison is exactly right, because I think one of the strengths of the MOBA genre in general, and certainly in Guards of Atlantis too, because it abstracts and simplifies a lot of things about the video games, is that there's a simplicity to the objective. You're pushing down this lane, kill the enemy creatures, kill the enemy heroes, and just keep doing that and keep doing it well. Like, there's not a complicated like victory condition to explain. There's not, you know, multiple ways you can get victory points. It's quite a simple, like, one-minded goal, and the reward comes in how well you complement your teammates in order to achieve that. And that feels like a sport to me. I think it's why the genre does so well in like the esports space.
I think what I've heard is that the reason that, you know, Mark on Friday nights is going to soccer night, Neelan is going to Guards of Atlantis night, which is why he is in fact the closest barrager to death.
Wow.
Is that what I'm hearing?
That sounds about right.
I think Guards of Atlantis is super cool, and I'm excited for the Kickstarter to come out. My one reservation is there's a little bit of hand-waving in terms of knowing the cards or whether those cards are public or private discard information. So if you have any sensitivity towards I want to see every card that someone has in order to make a decision on my turn, there's a little bit of hand-waving in terms of how that process works, because you could play this as a perfect information no luck game, but the game would still take 6 hours.
Yeah, I think it's such a hard balance of doing that right. I've toyed around with the idea of like, oh, maybe there's an information card for each hero that you give, but then, yeah, like you said, if you're like analyzing that, then that loses a lot of what makes it play faster.
Yeah, it is interesting how it translates MOBA so directly. What it ends up coming down to is people misplaying.
Yeah.
It's usually about people overstepping or going, oh, dang, I didn't realize that Mark's range with his sniper was that far, and I stepped one click too close to him, and he got me. And so in a lot of ways, it's about managing misplays for a lot of those games, at least until the late game. Mm-hmm. But I have, Mark, you have played League of Legends. I used the username Mark Basada Sucks. So you've got about 100 hours in LoL.
Wait, that's your League of Legends name?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
So you're pretty good.
One thing I want to say to close this out is that this is going to be the very first board game that we are going to award our official new Board Game Barrage Medal of Excellence.
Medal of Excellence.
And you'll see that on the Kickstarter campaign page. It's something that we're excited to sort of have a official logo that sort of represents our official endorsement of games that we feel super strongly about. So yeah, that's a super exciting thing, and we're super grateful to RT for having Guards of Atlantis II be the first game that utilizes that.
Medal of Excellence.
And if you want to see Neelan on our YouTube channel, you can do that at youtube.com/boardgamebarrage, where he gives a impassioned overview of what he likes about Guards of Atlantis II. Mm-hmm. And then there's beautiful cutaways to try to cut away from Neelan as much as possible. So if you are listening to this episode on the day of release, it is the last day that you can vote for Board Game Barrage in the Golden Geek Awards. And you can do that at boardgamebarrage.com/vote. Any vote you give us would be much appreciated to help us spread the good word of the podcast. Mark gave me a thumbs up. He approves.
We want to win.
So let us move on to our feature topic for the week. We kind of just wanted to use this time to chill a little bit with each other, reflect on where we're at, and try to be a little uplifting, which is challenging given all the death talk that Mark has brought into this episode, about board gaming and 2020, what we're looking forward to, whether that's games and Kickstarters or conventions, just how we are remaining positive and how we are embracing our hobby. It's not about online gaming. It's just sort of a check-in. I think this has gone on, and I can start. I think this has gone on longer than I anticipated, and it is more challenging than I anticipated. I'm cooped up here with the blue tank. What do you think that does to a man? But yeah, how have you guys been holding up?
I've been super, super busy. I'm basically like working more than I ever have. So I really have very, very little downtime, and game playing has been pretty much non-existent. I've been playing like 1 or 2 games a week if I'm lucky, like very short, very like easy to play sort of level games, like light games. So I find myself on one hand yearning for a heavier game experience, but that's more of a theoretical yearning because I'm just pretty much always exhausted, so I don't ever really feel like I'm up for something too brain burnery. So I'm just looking forward to a more regular schedule and then just having the mental capital to use on a more brain-burny game. I missing brain-burny games, basically.
I've had this sort of period of transition for the last couple of weeks where I came out of being in a very, very intense work schedule. I work in the video game industry, and the end of crunch is always just this period of readapting to normal life to some extent, and it's kind of hard to just feel like I'm justified in spending my free time. And that might sound strange, but I kind of always feel like I go through this of just feeling like I can't sit down and do a thing. But having digital games has actually been a good way just to be like, okay, I can play a 2-hour game sitting on my computer without, a lot of the rigmarole of going to a game night or like a lot of the surroundings of it. So I feel like that's been an easy way for me to transition into playing a couple of more smaller games, but I don't feel like I've played anything of substance. Like you said, Mark, I feel like it's been a very long time since I played anything even approaching like a medium weight board game. I've been talking about a lot of solo games I've been doing. I've been kind of just playing the hits of Coffee Roaster and Arion and Renegade, like I said, which I'll talk about next week. But yeah, it's been a little bit strange for me the last few weeks. I feel like I'm getting closer to the idea. In fact, one of my regular game nights, we're now talking about having a regular tabletop simulator game night. So that I might be able to play more like, heavier stuff in the near future. So yeah, I'm excited.
One of your regular game nights that we're not invited to?
Yes, I think that was implied.
Yeah, I think, Mark, your note about the mental aptitude for it is totally real and true. And, I see these people sort of organizing games in the Discord, and they're like, who wants to play, 1830, we're starting at 5 p.m. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Not only is work hard, but like, it's just a weird mental space to even like invest your mental energy in that. That's a tough thing right now.
I am also, speaking of our Discord and our friends' Discords, I am feeling a sort of a FOMO when it comes to seeing friends of mine who are more inclined to playing heavier games or have the time to play heavier games, like scheduling these games on what feels like a fairly regular basis, and just either not having the time or not having the inclination. And just like, I do have a sense of regret that I'm not wanting to play those games or having the time to play those games. I mean, I played a couple games of Hansa using Tabletopia, and those were great experiences. So when I think back to those, I'm like, oh man, I wish I was playing more games on tabletop simulators. But I'll look forward to getting back into the swing of things.
So what are we looking forward to in board gaming?
Besides getting into real face-to-face game nights and having the time to get into face-to-face game nights, I'm looking forward to conventions. I'm looking forward to, well, I guess this is part and parcel with looking forward to getting into game nights. I'm looking forward to like getting into a place with people who are focused on gaming. Something like Dice Tower West, something like Shucks, something like even the local Strategicon sounds great to me. Something like that. Some board game focused event sounds like a real fun thing to do.
Yeah, I'm excited, especially for the ones that fall closer to the end of the year, where if it becomes viable that we go to Shucks and we go to PAX Unplugged, that sounds really, really exciting to me. Like, having been to both of those each once, they're just both very friendly, sit down and play board games conventions. You know, there's not a lot, unlike a Gen Con, there's not a lot of the sort of the extravagance, the rigmarole of like the exposition hall. It's more just grab a new cool game and play it. And I could do with that right now for sure.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about the BGB branded face masks where it's just a solid splash of red, you know, and then right over my lips, the red tank.
Are we announcing those now? I thought those were still in production.
I mean, those are custom, you know, like one-off.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to some of the conventions later in the year, hoping to, you know, make it back to Shucks at the very least. But obviously, we will wait and see how the authorities tell us to act. It'll be weird, right? Are we wearing face masks?
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have gloves on? Can I get BGB branded gloves?
Oh,
You know, or those little things that the trained people use to pick up components.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So we can't touch anything, you know? Don't touch the components. We can hug each other, but then when you touch the game, that's where you use the train suction.
Sounds great.
So one Kickstarter game that I wanted to talk about, because I know Neelan and I have been talking about it separately, is Ankh, the sound that the Untitled Goose makes, which is Ankh. Neelan, are you excited for Ankh?
I definitely am. I think as still one of the, it seems like in the board game industry, one of the staunchest supporters of Rising Sun. Like Blood Rage, maybe less so, but I like Eric Lang's style that he's brought to these games. I think each of them feels unique. Each of them feels pretty different, and each of them has like a table presence that is just sort of incredible. And like Ankh doesn't look like an exception. It looks pretty beautiful. It has the, you know, these signature miniatures that Simon are obviously known for. Yeah, I like the look of this a lot, and I think it's kind of a no-brainer that I will end up backing this.
I've already backed it.
I kind of just always save it to the last minute for some reason.
I think Ankh will be one of the few games I back.
Wow.
Just because, you know, I will back it, I'll play one of your copies, and then I'll figure out if I want to sell it or hold on to it. But this is a game, feels like a no-brainer back, because if I don't like it, I think there'll be without a doubt an audience for on the secondary market for it. So this is pretty much a no-brainer.
I think we'd be remiss to not mention the fact that Cool Mini or Not is in some strange financial situations, and you can read up about that online if you want. Backing a Kickstarter does come with some potential risk or downside, and that is all the way up to the companies as big as Cool Mini or Not.
Or come on.
Yeah, we're not doing that. They're out of their minds.
Also,
it's like there's the other publisher, the USA Opoly has rebranded themselves as the Op.
I know.
And you're out of your mind if you think I'm ever going to say the Op without being a joke. I honestly it reminds me of Nintendo tried to change their logo in like the late 90s to like graffiti Nintendo.
Oh, yeah.
Like it literally was the Nintendo logo, but in graffiti. And it's like the try-hard kid, you know, it's like, we're the Op now, guys. We make the Harry Potter game. Like, yeah, we're not that dumb, terrible company that no one likes any of their games. We're the Op now. It's horrible.
Come On is horrible, too. I think Cool Mini or Not is such an interesting name. The first time I heard Cool Mini or Not, I know it like sort of doesn't really make sense, but it's just so weird. It's just such a weird name for a company that I've always thought it was clever or interesting at the very least.
Did they switch straight from Cool Mini or Not to Come On, or wasn't it Simon for a little bit?
It was Simon.
I didn't even.
I don't know if that was
Simon.
official. Yeah, I don't mind Simon either.
But it's like them sending out to podcasters and the press and being like, we prefer to be called Come On now. Nope. We don't care what you prefer.
while we're on this talking about Kickstarters, it kind of feels like I was looking at my Kickstarter backing, and it feels like the year of David Turtzi for me a little bit, because he's got Excavation Earth coming. I have Anachrony, which is fulfilling, which I'm excited for, like the new deluxe edition of Anachrony. Roman Roll, which is this multiplayer roll and write game. Venice. It just feels like there's a lot of cool stuff that he has on the horizon. I still have Rush MD, which I mentioned recently that I have but haven't played yet. So I'm just like on this little bit of a David Turtzi high right now.
I've never played one of his games.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if you have and just don't know it.
No, I looked the other day.
Interesting. I don't think that everything he put out, that at least that I played last year, was incredible, but like he seems so prolific, and that's a good or a bad thing depending how you interpret it. But I like a lot of the stuff he's put out for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at my my Kickstarter backed games. And that list is 0 now. So I am excited about another game acquisition model, that being math trades. That's another thing I'm looking forward to post quarantine. I know I've talked about setting up the BGB math trade. I just have been so slammed to work, but I am desperate to get it going. I'm really excited to get the BGB math trade working. So, and I expect to be less busy come the end of the month / the start of May. So I'm still optimistic about getting the BGB math trade up off the ground. So look for that in the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord soon. And I guess specifically the trading channel there.
The last thing I wanted to cover was just that Oink Games, my favorite Japanese publisher, has updated their website. It is beautiful and very colorful, and you can order some of their new games now that they were intending to release this year. The problem being that you have to use like a Japan is not allowing very many packages outside of the country, so Oink Games is not allowing you to purchase them directly, because I had a very big order canceled. It seems like I love them more than they love me. But they also have put together a product that is sort of a retrospective catalog of all the games they've released from 2010 to 2018, which is like, for some reason, a lot of the logo and color and things I think about for Board Game Barrage are based off of my love of Oink Games. So I'm excited to pick that up. But they also have released a new version of Insider, which we've mentioned a few times, and that's Insider Black, along with another game called Durian. They have a version of Rights, which was the precursor to Startups. So they have a box called Rights that includes Startups in it, while also including the original rules for Rights. So I'm excited to check that out and see what that's about. Yeah, so I think for me, there's a lot more looking and thinking about board games I might play in the future as opposed to actually playing them. And it's not just consumption. Sometimes I'm just looking around at stuff and kind of reading more geek lists and looking for inspiration for games I might pick up in the future. But it is definitely a different time for how we engage with board games.
Totally. I was thinking about this a lot this week, especially of just whether it feels indulgent to buy games that, there's no chance that we'll be playing in like the very near future. But I still feel like, I think that's still such an important part of like engaging with a hobby, right? Is being excited about a thing. And as long as you're being sort of reasonable about it, like still allowing yourself to indulge in that side of the hobby.
Yeah, I think especially as we come out on the other side, it will be very interesting to see what types of projects these small publishers are capable of coming out with. And I think it'll be a time to definitely support them if you can monetarily. Obviously, it's a tough time for everyone on that front. But I actually think that we may see fewer game releases, but more things that the publishers are very adamant and excited about. And so that's something that could be interesting and something that I'm thinking about kind of when the floodgates open back up. And that's going to do it for this episode number 120, the oldest episode we've ever done of the Board Game Barrage podcast. You can find us on all forms of social media. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. You can hang out with us on a forum at boardgamebarrage.com/guild. You can chat with us all day at boardgamebarrage/discord. Whatever you do, just tag Mark in your message. He will reply in 15 minutes or less.
But please do tag.
That's a promise?
Yes, you need to tag me. Nowadays, I need to be tagged, because otherwise
That's a promise. Mark's promise.
A promise and a threat. Boom.
Thank you so much to Heart Society for letting us use their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. That's all I got. That's all we got.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Okay, that's right.
I was just trying to make eyes at you.
I appreciate that. I always appreciate that. Remember that, Galen. I always appreciate when you do that.
Stay safe. We're all in this together in these trying times. In times of hardship. I work in advertising, guys, so all of that's staying in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just add that in, in sort of like different places throughout.
Yes, it's like I'll sprinkle the warm feelings throughout.
Yeah, and then if you could make the music sort of swell, like right as I, kind of say something profound.
Yeah.
And that'll make the people at home.
Well, see,
what will they?
The thing is, like, I have background music playing throughout every episode, but it's waiting for you to say something profound for it to swell. So I don't know if people have heard any of the background music yet, but as soon as you say something profound, I swear that background music is going to swell.
Like Moses.
Like Moses swelled.
No, like the Red Sea parting. Have you even read the Bible?
I have read the Bible. How dare you?
I don't believe you. All right, so that's it. We're done. Okay, so I think maybe...